the saw blade is going to cut at and all these things that are going to go on. Yeah, that would get me. And the doctor actually just kind of does the cutting, but he does it at the angles that the robot is set up for all these cuts. They cut the femur and they cut the tibia, and then it's all set to go exactly with the knee joint that they decided to put in there and everything. And it's like an hour and a half later, and you're in the recovery room already. So I feel like I was pretty happy I waited from when I originally hurt my knee to get this done. They've improved a lot of things. Well, we've waited for a while, and Green Sanctuary has been patient with the time to talk to us about composting, but kind of when you think about it, this is maybe the right time a year to talk about it too. So I know our compost heap, the little critters and organisms and everything in there, they've started, I think, getting pretty active in our compost heap at home, and I'm interested in hearing a few things more about how better to do that. We've got a few things coming up. In 2 weeks, Scott and I are going to be talking about the values of science and the importance of science, and kind of a discussion that we hope that you can come in here for and participate in. And then just with a 1 week turnaround on that, because we've gone 3rd and 5th week this month, then I started looking into some interesting people in science and understanding the world, and I have a person I'm preparing to talk a bit about that as well too. Somebody who I hadn't heard of until I started looking at this. So someone who came in with a whole new way of looking at the world and found out a lot of interesting stuff that linguistically about the Indian subcontinent. So I'm interested in talking about that coming up too. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in early May, Scott and I always have the Science Slam. We present the Science Slam, and I know I'm looking out and seeing people who've talked about it and presented for it before, and it's a time to have about 10 minutes to talk about an interesting topic that probably would be hard for you to come up with a whole hour to talk about, but interesting talk about physics. We've had physics demonstrations and different topics in there. So anything from the cooking theory about how cooking changed the way humanity evolved. So a whole variety of different topics. And please, if you can, think about something that you'd like to participate in. You can talk to me or Scott if you get our emails, or you can talk to me later and get my email or Scott's email to kind of bring up a topic to talk about for 10 minutes or so. So with no further ado, Scott, you don't have anything else necessary to add? Okay. I want to turn the time over to the Green Sanctuary, and thank you so much for presenting today.
Welcome. I'm Susan Kate.
We're simulcasting on YouTube, so
Okay.
if you need a microphone to walk around with, we can give you one of those.
Okay. I probably would prefer that. I'm a retired teacher, so I like to walk around, not stand in one place like this. Take your notebook out and everybody start writing stuff down so I can fill your head with nonsense. Let's see if this works. Yes, okay, it works. So once again, welcome. As Mike mentioned, spring is coming, so take up a new hobby, composting. First question, read the audience. How many people are composters already? Okay, so we have a few. So we want you to jump right in. Okay, so we have some slides we're going to go through with you, but jump right in and ask questions, jump right in and give some advice. I suppose you can even correct us, that's okay too. And then I give you an extra credit point if you would correct us. All right, so first of all, generally what we're going to do today is talk about what is composting, why you should do it. We're going to talk about how we do it. And I wouldn't say we're experts, but all three of us have been doing composting for a long time. Pat probably the longest. And then we want to share what kinds of questions do you have? What sorts of challenges have you had? And just other things that you want to say about it. And then we have some more details too. If you're interested in a little bit more about the biology of it, we'll talk about that too. So let's go. All right, so what is it? I thought it was interesting. Compost is a noun and a verb, right? You do it and you have it. Organic material can be composted, and of course organic means carbon, as opposed to inorganic, which is everything that isn't carbon. So you can put all sorts of things in your bin to make the compost. So you're composting to make compost. And some of the things you can put in, any kind of food scraps, paper towels, toilet paper tubes, and so on. But you want to make sure not to put in meat or animal products just because that's going to attract bigger critters from your yard that you don't want. I think the other important thing is to be mixing brown and green. So you've got the weeds from your yard, but then you've got dried leaves, and you also have the paper towel tubes and maybe some paper, but just kind of mix. And we'll talk a little bit more about the mixing in a bit.
Putting the weeds in, doesn't that make the seeds grow?
Well, some people will say don't put the weed seeds in, right? So for example, dandelion seeds, if you're putting in the little seed heads, yes, now you're going to be spreading that all over. So weeds without the seed heads. However, I got to say, I throw pretty much everything in there. You know, I throw tomatoes that were rotten or half-eaten by squirrels. I throw tomatoes, and then next year, when I use the compost in some big pots in my backyard, I get little tomato seeds, and I just pull them out and throw them back in the compost. So I wouldn't say I'm like hygienic. Yes, I'm just like throw it all in, and if you get little tiny tomato plants, either leave them if they're in a place you want them, or just pull them out. Next slide. All right, so Pam, it's yours.
Pardon? Oh, you want me to talk about this
Yeah.
one? Okay, well, of course, it saves landfill space. You're not throwing things in the landfill, you're using them on your own property, in your own garden. Combats climate change. Well, why would that happen? Because you're not putting all that carbon back into the air. Improves soil structure, definitely, helps prevent erosion. Conserves water. Well, that's because you're putting more soil on top of your lawn or your bushes or whatever, you know. Yeah, you can put it also under your bushes, not just on your vegetable garden. You can mix into your soil with your outdoor pots, like Susan said. And it makes for healthy, nutritious soil without using chemical fertilizers. And it's free. You're throwing things away. You're not throwing them away. You're reprocessing and reusing. And so I've been doing it for a long time, and I have mine in 2 bins. We'll talk about that later.
I want to add to that, it's easy and satisfying. You know, you have bread that's got a little mold on it, and I feel bad, I hate to waste the bread. Oh no, I'm going to throw it in my compost bin. Or I find something in the back of my refrigerator that smells kind of funny, throw it in the compost bin. So it makes me sort of feel better that I'm not wasting stuff. Furthermore, when you look at what it starts out at and what it becomes, I have a picture of that a little bit, it's really cool. You know, Mother Nature doing her work, and it's just really cool what you get.
Oh, okay, I'm going to do this one. This is showing what we do here at church. And I don't know, when I'm here, coffee hour, try to put the bucket out in front of the trash bin in the learning center, so, in the downstairs hall, so that people are aware and will put their food scraps, like if we're having coffee hour with refreshments. And, you know, because we see that a lot of people, are, especially if we're using paper plates, you know, just everything goes in the garbage can. And the food should be scraped off and put into the compost bin, not necessarily the paper plates, but sometimes those are all right. I prefer that if you're putting plates in, that you at least tear them into small pieces. And don't stack all the coffee cups together and then put them in the compost, because it takes it takes it a long time to break down if they're put in like that. But, you know, we have the two green buckets. Usually we only use the one, but it's there if we have a great big food party and we need 2 buckets. Coffee grounds and filters, and fruit and bread. Shows all the things that it's okay to put in, and the things that, small paper towels, uncoated paper plates. Well, how do you tell if it's a coated paper plate or not? If in doubt, don't put it in there. So, no meat and dairy, no oils and grease, no pizza boxes, no carry-out containers. You know, it's all there on the sign, and we try to put that out in Krebs Hall when we're having an event with food, so that people are reminded what to put in there and what not. And then we take it outside and put it in the bin out here. And I need to bring more straw that I have at home. Right now, I notice we don't have any straw. And I think once upon a time we had 2 bins outside, and there was a space problem when we got the air conditioning, so we have just 1 now. But if we keep it, you know, mixed, this is the magic mixing tool. There's one out there. It's called a compost crank. You put it in there, and you turn it, and then you pull it up. And it mixes what's on the bottom, you know, turns it up to the top of the pile. So, this is what I have at home under my sink. I have this little bucket. Fits right in the cupboard under the sink, and it's got these little filters that go on the top. I have tape on it because sometimes it falls out, but that's to keep the odors inside.
Mine's never this clean.
Well, I washed it today, of course. And, you know, when I empty it, then I wash it out and I wash it outside with the hose and throw the water into the compost bin, you know. And, oh, there's my compost bin. I have 2 of them. Now, if you have space, it's a good idea to have 2. Not everybody has that kind of space. I used to have just a big pile, and that works for some people. I've always had dogs, and the one dog I had, she would eat anything, and she kept going into the heap and pulling things out. So eventually, you know, I had one of those. I think there was a picture of just made out of wood, you know, 3-sided, and I would just throw everything in there. But she could go in there and find things she wanted to snack on, and I didn't like that. So I got these from Gardner Supply. That's where I got most of my things, a company called Gardner Supply. And I get the bucket and the little filters that you change every now and then to keep the odors inside the bucket. And so I alternate. You know, one year I'll have an active bin and a resting bin. And the active bin becomes the resting bin the next year. And you take the compost, take things out of the resting bin and distribute it on the ground on your garden beds or under your bushes, whatever. And if you find things in there that hadn't had a chance to break down all the way, you throw them back in the active bin. Or if they seem like they're never going to break down, you just throw them in the garbage. So that's how I do it. And I have a big yard, as you can probably tell. But if you don't have space for 2 bins, you can definitely still compost with just one. So that's about it.
Could you show them this, talk about this little gate here, at the bottom?
Oh, yeah, you can take things out. That's when you want to empty, you know. You can lift that, it slides up, and you can take your pitchfork or whatever and pull things out from the bottom, because usually the things on the bottom are more decomposed. You might find more actual usable soil at the bottom. I haven't done that yet this year, so I forgot about that. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, Mike.
Do you screen somehow to get?
I do. I guess I don't have that in my picture, but, because right now, I have these, my son built them for me, I think. He built it out of like hardware cloth, and so they're big. Right now, I have them covering my pond for the winter, so that things don't fall in there, and, you know, my dog doesn't try to go swimming in the cold water. But, yeah, the screens, I put them on top of the wheelbarrow. I will put one of these big screens on top of the wheelbarrow, and then as I take things out, the good soil falls through the screen, and the other stuff, you know, it's either garbage or you put it back in the new active bin. So, any other questions? Yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
You said screen, how big is the square, is it a quarter inch or?
Yeah, it's hardware cloth. They're
Oh,
like,
your clock?
well, no, they're wire, but it's called hardware cloth if you want to go buy some at Home Depot or something, you know.
Okay,
Uh,
never seen it.
And, yeah, it's little, maybe a half-inch
Okay.
squares. And so when my son made them, I think he just he stapled it all onto a frame that's made out of just, you know, scrap wood or 2x4s, whatever. Not 2x4s, they're smaller than that, 1x2s maybe. And so they'll sit on top of my pond. I have 2 of them on top of my pond, so to keep, I have a spruce tree right over the pond, and I want to keep all those pine cones, all those cones from falling in the water, you know, plus the dog.
Yeah, so I saw you had, you like to use eggshells. Do you need to roast those first?
Eggshells, do I need what?
Yeah, you don't need to roast those? Okay.
The what?
Roast eggshell.
Yeah.
I just throw mine in.
And those won't attract critters like dairy and meat?
I've never had.
No, you know, they're all right to put in the compost, the shells. I also sometimes just crush them up and put them right on top of my garden. I read somewhere recently that that's a good thing to do, so I'm trying it out, you know. But,
If you have a sealed lid like this, that they usually lock, and I've never had a problem with raccoons or anything getting in, but they try. There's little teeth marks on the outside of the lid on my pile. But if you had an open pile, I think it might be a consideration.
You said you need to use straw at a certain point, or a
I'm
certain...
sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you for some reason.
You said you needed to use a certain percentage of straw at some point?
Yes, I have, you know, like I have bought bales of straw at Wanamaker's. Is where I usually get it. It's available other places. And just as a mulch, you know, on my garden beds. And sometimes I add it to the compost, you know, if it seems to need more dry stuff in it.
Can you use like shredded paper?
Yes. In fact, when I was working, I was a court reporter, and I used to, I mean, eventually it all went computerized, but I was printing out hundreds of pages of transcript, you know, from my jobs, and I would put, would have paper shredder, which I think is not working anymore, but I would save that paper and I would use that in the compost or on top of the beds, you know, for, it's good mulcher.
Cool.
So midsummer, when I have a lot of tomatoes and I'm like canning and things, it gets real slimy, and that's a good time to add what Susan called brown, or what Pat was saying with the straw. So I think, Susan, you also keep some straw nearby, or?
I do have some straw, but I don't use much of it.
So, you know, basically you look in there, and if it's like, you know, yuck, or you're getting a smell off of it, that's usually when I'll go ahead and add some kind of dryer material.
Well, you can see I have straw on the actual garden beds, you know, around the,
Yeah, some of the dead grasses or whatever you throw in there, right?
yeah, right.
Or dried leaves that you save.
Oh, yeah, that
Yeah.
goes in the compost too. Question.
We live in a condominium, so of course we have no place to put the compost. So we have partnered with Karen Campbell, who has a great big garden, and we have a bin that we keep on the counter from IKEA, and Russ smashes it down about twice a week, and then we put it in coffee cans and put it in the refrigerator. And then on Sunday, we exchange. Karen gives us the clean cans, and we give her the full cans.
That's great.
And we've been doing that for over a year now. And if Karen says, I'm not coming this week, I can't come, we bring it here.
Okay, yeah.
And it's worked out really well. I can't believe what we were throwing away. Yeah. And we even take our tea bags and open them up and put the tea in.
Oh, I just take the tags off.
Okay.
You know, I do put the bag itself in, but I remove the string and the
Sure, no
tags,
string,
because
no
those don't
tags.
break down.
Yeah, and you have to take
She
the,
told us that some of them were coming to the top and the squirrels were playing with them. Not all tea bags are 100% compostable.
I see.
yeah,
So we just eliminate the problem. Coffee filters are okay.
and we have to take the tags off of the fruit because those also
Oh, yeah.
come to the
right.
top. So,
Excuse me, it's a compost buddy concept.
it is,
And
absolutely.
it seems to me that if we have people that have big yards who like compost, and we have condo dwellers or apartment dwellers who would not want to put it in the trash, if we get them together, it would really work well.
Well,
You have to have people who are willing to do it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I would be willing to have people bring their compost to me.
Well,
It's a big garden.
there you go.
Yes?
The other thing that's important,
Oh, I just want to say,
okay,
Naperville has started.
If you live in Naperville, they have recently started a composting program where they have a place you can take it.
yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I live in Lyle. We have Lakeshore Recycling, and in the brown bags that you put your yard waste in every week, you can throw kitchen compost. So check with your village or town and see if they have that kind of program. In the village of Lyle, you can also get a compost cart. It's a smaller cart than the recycling cart, and I don't know how much it costs because I don't have one, but you can get a compost cart and throw your compost in there, and then they pick it up. So, you know, go on your village website, find the link for your waste hauler, and see if they have that. More and more communities are doing that now. I prefer not to pay for it, plus I want to use my compost, so I'm not going to do that.
Does anyone live in Downers Grove, within the city limits, or Downers Grove Township? They just announced a whole new program starting April 1st, I think it is, where All your organic stuff is free to get rid of. There'll be no more charges for your brown bags. I think they are switching over to a cart, more of a cart system. But that'll be messed up pizza boxes, all that stuff, chicken skins, everything will be able to go into a single bin. But I want to keep a lot of it in my yard. So and if you don't have a yard, but you do have pickup, individual home pickup, or if you're in a it's the village of Downers Grove. I live in Downers Grove, but it's Lyle Township, so we're not part of that. So it can be kind of weird if you're, in an unincorporated area. You might have to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm unincorporated as well.
Or if you live in an area where they're kind of finicky about putting a compost pile within your yard and your neighbor might be offended by it, that would probably be another way that you could try to handle that. So. Next one? Yeah, Susan. This is Susan.
Okay, so this is how I do it, and I am not a purist by any means. This is my kitchen counter, and what I use for a compost bin, that's a chocolate-covered raisins container from Costco. So anything with a tight cover on it, I used to use milk cartons. So I'd rinse them out, put it on the counter, just put the stuff in there, and when it was all filled, I'd pull off the plastic and throw the whole thing in my compost bin. What comes out the bottom is the waxy stuff on the outside, but the rest of it decomposed. All right, so why did I stop doing that? Fruit flies. So especially, not bad in the winter, but in the summer, there are fruit flies all over the place. So it's like my husband, he had enough of that. Okay, so then I started using containers that had lids. And I actually bought some ceramic kind of crock pots that were supposed to be for compost and broke both of them. Kate has a metal one.
Yeah, I have a really nice stainless steel one my mom gave us, and she's been gone for a long time, so we probably had it over 20 years.
So, and where can you buy that stuff? Pat mentioned Gardener Supply, that's who I use too. It's an online company on the East Coast.
There's a nice one at IKEA.
IKEA? Okay, that's probably cheaper, right. Okay, so first I'm collecting the compost, and then if it's cold outside and it's filled and I don't feel like taking it out to the compost bin, I'll put it on, we have a little screened-in porch, so I'll put it on the porch, and then when the weather is a little better, I'll tromp and bring it outside. So there's my compost bin. I only have one. It's right up against this is the garage. And you can see here, I don't have this nice spinner that Pat has, but it is a metal stick that has wings on it, sort of, and you can use it to smash stuff down, which you have to smash it down once in a while. I don't do it often, but not only am I smashing it down because there's airspace, but you're also mixing when you do that. So that's mine. This is, I took this picture just a few days ago. So if you open up the lid, that's what you see. Notice towards the top, there's some ramen noodles that I found in the back of my pantry, and they were like 5 years old, so I thought, let's get rid of those. But all that stuff will break down. Okay, and some orange peels, and notice there's leaves in there. And this isn't hay, but it's just dried grasses and, dead stuff from last fall that dried out, so I mixed some of that stuff in. And then this last picture, if you can see it, that's the product. Okay, and again, I took that a few days ago. The lid pushes, or this door pushes up just like Pat's, and there's the compost. We were talking about screening it. I don't screen my compost. I just use it as is. And I'll throw it on bushes. I have some raised beds. I'll throw it in the raised beds and mix it with like maybe some mushroom compost and some new soil. And I also fill garden pots with it. So if you have big pots in your garden, I'll put in like half compost and half just potting soil. Some of the compost isn't totally decomposed, but so what? You know, you throw it in the yard and mix it with other stuff and it decomposes, so it's fine with me. This reminds me to say, you don't want to put big sticks in there because they don't decompose fast enough. I have a little chipper, so I save my big sticks, like it's been so windy. So I've got a ton of big sticks now that I have to go clean up, and I have a little chipper that I use, and then I'll throw them around trees. The other thing I find that I don't want to put in, my compost bin isn't big enough, are stalks from native grasses. If you have some of those growing and you cut them down, they just don't decompose fast enough in the space that I have. So I don't put those in. I think it's fun. And when you open up that door, it's like, I know it's science, but it kind of looks like magic. You know, that you put in this, and then you get out this. And if there's stuff in there, like, you know, maybe a little piece of plastic got accidentally put in there, so you just pull it out and throw it in the garbage, right? So the stuff that shouldn't have been in there, just throw it out. Oh, I just thought of a funny story. One time, I'm digging through there, and I see something gold in there, and I'm like, what the heck is that? It was my wedding ring that I lost about 1.5 years ago. You know, it just had fallen off my hand when I was doing something else. And there it was, undecomposed, in the bottom of the barrel. So that was kind of fun.
One other thing I was thinking of is, it's pretty easy to do, but then I noticed, like, sometimes in the summer when it gets so dry, you do have to add water, I know, Pat.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because it will dry out and it kind of stops the whole thing and it gets like a brick around the edges. The center usually continues to decompose, but the edges just,
Either, you know, just use my garden hose or, you know, or it's too cold to, I mean, you just fill a bucket and throw it in.
any more questions about the process? It's pretty easy. And I think any of us would volunteer to come over and help get you started if that's what you're interested in.
Grass clippings.
I totally avoid that. For one thing, there's a lot of weed seeds in it. The other thing is, when they decompose, it can get anaerobic, and you get a terrible ammonia smell that comes off of it. We just mulch our grass when we cut it. If we do have any, like we do bag it for some reason, it's usually mixed in with fall leaves or something where it's a drier texture, and then we'll put it in a separate area in the yard, not directly.
I have a lot of space in my yard, and part of it, I put prairie plants in. So I have a lot of big things, and weeds, of course. And so up in the back corner of my yard, not up against the fence, I just have a weed pile, and I keep throwing, you know, year after year, I keep throwing my unusable weeds back there, or things that are too big to use in the compost or whatever. And it just, you know, it keeps breaking down. Once in a while, I use my fork to turn it over. But I realize not everybody has the kind of space that I have in my yard, but that's what I do with, you know, things I pull out of the prairie or weeds I pull out of the garden, you know. So that's another option. Anybody else? I don't know.
I was telling Pat that she should definitely offer a tour of her yard. It's quite interesting. She's established a prairie there as well as what she helped us do here. It's really, really something to see.
Yeah.
I feel like you're,
And like I said, I would be willing to have people bring, you know, we were talking about community compost. If somebody wants to bring their compost to my yard, you know, or their garbage to put in the compost, I'm open to that. Within limits, I guess. I can't do it for all of you. I don't have a big enough bin, but, you know, if you want to compost and you don't have a place to do it, let me know.
Yeah, I just through this picture and to show you another type of compost bin. Obviously, animals can get in that, so that would be good for probably leaves and weeds and small brush. I don't think I'd start putting kitchen waste in there, because then you're gonna get all sorts of things looking at that. But it's, you know, you see these every once in a while if you walk through your neighborhood, and some people have two of them. One where it's kind of starting to compost, and then they kind of let that go and then start another one. So we want to do some more sharing. We've had some questions already. What do you do? If you have a compost bin at your house, what do you do? Or if you don't have one and you compost some other way, like a compost buddy, tell us what you do.
We started composting when we moved out here to Wheaton. There was a compost bin already at the house we bought, so we started throwing stuff in it, and it works very well. It's actually really reduced our garbage disposal things. I think we put our garbage out once a month or something like that. You see all the neighbors putting their garbage out every week, and we're throwing very, very seldom are we throwing garbage out. But yeah, we have a pond and a native prairie in our backyard and an organic garden. So we're constantly going around. In fact, it keeps seeming to me, my challenge is, it seems like the compost heap fills up all the time, and it's up there at the top, and you're wondering how to do it, and you're trying to get stuff out when it's not really, you're sure it's the time, or you're not really ready to do it. So we bought a second compost one, and this one, it's a barrel and it spins. And it's got two sides to it, and you can have like one side being active and the other side not. But yeah, it seems like whatever we have, the compost grows to fill the bins that we throw in there. And I'm not sure if we're not taking it out soon enough. I don't go out there and churn it. I kind of thought that was an interesting item you had there too, because I'm going in with a pitchfork, and it's kind of a closed space, trying to get
Well,
things
I remember
over.
when we had one of those spinning out here at the church. I don't know what happened to it, because that was really useful
Yeah,
to, because then every time somebody puts something in there, it can get mixed,
right.
And I don't know, the bin that we have now is just stationary, and we only have one, so you can't, and I think a lot of times, people don't even take the kitchen waste out and put it in the compost. I've been trying to do it whenever I'm here, for coffee hour. So I had an arm injury, so I haven't been to church much lately. But I'm getting better now, so I guess I'll be back. And
I feel like it's important to have a large way to get the compost out. We have a fairly small door. It seems like maybe a third of the size of yours, and you have to pick it out, and it's always down into the dirt, so you're getting dirt from outside out of the way, so you can lift this small little thing, and then it seems like I'm in there with like a little spade or something like that, a tiny little thing, and scooping it out and putting it in shovelful by shovelful, and that's always kind of frustrating too. The rotary one, I can put a small wheelbarrow under it and turn it, and then open up the door, and then things will fall out that way. It's a little bit nicer. But the screen seems like a nice idea too. Not that we need it. Like you say, whatever you throw in your garden, if it's too big, you just knock it up, break it up, or get it out of there, or whatever.
Any other?
I just want to add
Sure.
a funny story. We used to have a bin like this when we first moved into our house, and that was before we did much composting. We threw grass clippings and, like when I canned tomatoes, we just threw all the skins on. And this one night, we went out and there were like 20 possums. So we're showing the flashlight down, and they're all looking up at you with their little red eyes. So, yeah, if you're a little more casual about it, it might provide some humorous observations of wildlife. So.
Yeah, at one time, I almost had a heart attack because a little ground squirrel, I opened up the top to add some scraps, and the ground squirrel jumped out at me, and it was a little ground squirrel, but it scared the heck out of me because I wasn't expecting it. I'm, you know, we do have a screen on the bottom of the compost bin. Like, it doesn't have a bottom, obviously, because it's, you know, needs the microbes and stuff to come up and the insects and stuff. So there is a screen at the bottom that's supposed to keep those little guys out, but they can sew it in.
And it's not for the faint of heart, because sometimes you open it. Last summer we opened it, and there were millions of sow bugs, or the pill bugs. And usually when I open it, there's like a big spider that's kind of taken up residence there, and that's why you have the big long corkscrews, so you don't have to, you know, make it too personal when you're in there trying to take care of it. So yeah, don't be surprised when you open the lid, what might be saying hello.
Well, I mean, you want the decomposers, right? So that means insects and worms and plasmodium mold and all sorts of things that you can't see, sow bugs that you can, and so on.
Just a quick, the brown bags for yard waste, what happens to those? Do those get composted somewhere?
Yeah, the question was, what happens to the brown bags for compost? I'm not sure what each municipality does, but as I understand it, there's large, if you've seen pictures of it, they're like these, they look like these giant loaves of bread. And it's a huge compost pile, and they have a machine that goes over the top of it that is somehow constantly stirring it. If you check online, you'll be able to see that, but it just, the whole thing just breaks down. I mean, it's this industrial scale composting where you might hear that something's compostable, like a piece of picnic forks and knives and things like that. Generally, those won't break down in a home compost. They have to go where the heat is actually much higher to a temperature where it can begin to actually degrade the products that, Susan would probably know more about what those forks are made of, because
Well, there's forks made out of potatoes, potato starch, and different sorts of vegetable starch. And once again, they'll break down if you have a huge system with lots of heat, which we don't.
right, so any municipal compost curbside stuff that's occurring, that's where that stuff goes.
Right.
So even if it's like the sloppy bin where you throw your, you could throw raw chicken, bones, all kind of stuff in the municipal ones. We don't have that personally, but the yard waste stuff is, it's really simple compared to the more,
And it is composted. The only problem is they only pick it up in the summertime.
that's true, I think, for, depending on where you live, like where we live in Lyle Township, it is, we don't do it, but it is limited, like you said, in terms of pickup for all of those things, yeah. Right. Like I mentioned, Downers Grove is transitioning, it's gonna be year-round. I think all the other municipalities are right behind that because there is no active landfill in this area, in DuPage, any of the areas. It's all compacted into bricks and taken downstate or wherever the active landfills are. So it's just like that movie WALL-E, is that it, Susan?
Yeah.
Where they compacted it and it's, you know, there's these cubes of garbage that then get literally stacked and covered. It's quite atrocious, actually, though, when you think about it.
That's a good,
Doesn't Village of Lyle have an annual event? I think they have an annual event where you can bring yard waste and compost and stuff. You know, I'm trying to look it up right now, so.
that's a movie recommendation. If you haven't seen WALL-E, it's a Pixar movie from a long time ago. I mean, if you're worried about AI, and watch that movie. It's scary, but it's cute, scary, and really good. Any other this type of questions?
So if you have any, Green Sanctuary has an email address that I think is greensanctuary.org.
I used to live in Glen Ellen for 20 years in a little rickety ranch house over there, and I did more, but I did sort of like non-official composting. I didn't put it into a pile. I spread it under the Christmas trees at the back of the yard. There was an area like 20 feet wide, 70 feet long, that only the most horrible thorny weeds would grow there. And so I would just spread, clippings, grass clippings, leaves, anything that was, that my chipper, I had one of those ones that tow behind the car. So anything that, that was too big for, it was too big for that, then I used that in the fireplace. All the small hedges and stuff, I would put that in the chipper and grind it up into confetti. And then I had a freezer in the basement, so all the watermelon rinds and corn cobs would go into that. And whenever there was a storm and then I'm picking up sticks all over the yard, I would just take care of that. I'll spread it under the Christmas trees, and that kept the weeds down. Earlier, someone mentioned about weed control. I had a big problem with those, I don't know what you call them, those burr balls. They're like living balls of Velcro. And they ruin socks and they get in your hair. And I was battling those until I figured out, snip off the branches that have the burrs on them, yank up the stalks with the root ball on there, throw it in the chipper, and in 2 seasons, no more burr balls getting on my socks. So it's just another way without having an official, like composting container.
Those are called burdock, and it's actually a delicacy in Chinese cuisine. My husband has a friend who, when he comes over, I can eat that. He's wanting it, and if you dig it up, the root is huge. It's like as big as your arm, and that's why you can never get rid of them in your yard, because kind of like a peony, it's there forever.
Could be a sign for Asian carp.
Right.
So I found something about Village of Lyle. It's quarterly electronics and textiles recycling, not composting, but that's a valuable service too. So 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. They did have it on March 7th, and at the downtown Lyle commuter parking lot B, just west of the Village Hall. And the next one will be May 30th, 2026. And it's called Sustainable Saturday. So, I don't think you have to live in Lyle. If you live nearby and it's convenient for you to take textiles and electronics, we all seem to have, old clothes or electrical cords that you don't need anymore, that kind of stuff.
Covered this aspect, if anyone has any other questions about that. Today we're all thinking about climate change, and one of the ways that we can help with this process, whether you're doing backyard composting or if you're participating in the municipality pickup, excuse me. On the left, you'll see how we have been treating our soils forever. Soils are one of the most important resource, obviously, for humans, and we've lost, I don't even know the percentage, but we had to do something quickly about this, and so it's at the agricultural scale as well as, in our compost at home. It makes sense, we've been talking about this beautiful black gold that you throw in your garden. It retains water, prevents erosion, all these things prevent what you see on the left side, which is, what's the word? You strip everything away. Degraded or leach. You leach all the chemicals, the good stuff, all the nutrients out of the soil through the processes that we use today. We're so sloppy in our agricultural practices. So we end up with the soil on the left, which can barely do a rotation of corn without having soybeans and all those other things to put it next to it. But so this is some pretty new stuff. It's within the last decade or so where they've shown that the actual humus, if you want to call it, that black stuff, obviously it has carbon in it. That becomes incorporated into the soil. And there's newer evidence of that actually being converted by microbes. It's like microbes are just about everything in our gut. Now it's in the environment. They are so instrumental in this process of actually storing or sequestering is, I'm sure you're all familiar with that word, microbes actually incorporate the carbon into their little bodies, and then the dead microbes actually join that material, actually can combine with the soil minerals, and it becomes this really stable source for atmospheric carbon to be there then for many, many years and decades. So that's a really interesting thing that's been developed. A bunch of scientists down at Argonne have been involved with this. Someone that Julie Dastrell that I've met. Super interesting to me because I'm kind of like a science nerd and want to know how all this stuff works. But that's a really good reason to do it. So here's you can see the microbes here and the earthworms. It's all ecology. It's a circle. If we, obviously carbon dioxide enters the plants through photosynthesis. When the plants break down, those turn into materials that can then be passed on. If we don't incorporate that in a more fixed manner, like you see on the right, it just goes back to the atmosphere. So it's still a circular process of the carbon dioxide, but we're pumping out so much CO2 from burning fossil fuels that this is one way that we can return some of that back to the soil and try to incorporate there. So it's kind of an interesting new process that we've been doing some research on. The other thing, I think it's Mike, right, that was talking about throwing things under your trees as a way. Yeah, so I don't know if you've noticed when some of you are still young, but for me, we used to walk outside on a summer day and it was lightning bugs in the evening everywhere, literally. And recently I've noticed in our neighbors' yards, there's fewer and fewer and fewer. And if you go out in August or whenever they come out, I can't remember, in our yard, it's like, wow, look at all these lightning bugs. But the neighbors have the lawn service that picks up the leaves, they take them away from your property. These organisms you see here at the top, there's a bird watcher, ovenbird. Ovenbird needs this as an area to forage, lightning bugs. Each one of these organisms is actually dependent upon the leaf litter for some aspect of their life cycle. So it's such a simple thing. This is the front yard of my house. You can see that we take the leaves from the yard, we blow them into the beds that are surrounding it. And I noticed, I was trying to plant one of the perennials, a plant last summer, and I tried to dig a hole for it under this oak tree. It's a shade perennial. And it was just the fabric, if you want to call it that, of the material that was under the tree. I couldn't even hardly dig through it. And there was the white mesh of all the mycorrhizal fungi. So that whole thing, just think about how long it takes for that process to actually occur and build up. I think we started doing this probably 10, 15 years ago, and it's taken that long for that whole mesh and stable carbon store to get started. So you might have some people in your neighborhood that don't appreciate the leaves. Like Susan was saying, a lot of hers just kind of blew away the other day. We had 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But it's really important. We also leave the stems of the plants, and that's another source for if you're interested in this process. So, it's not just the carbon, it's the biodiversity that's supported by this type of yard care. And do you want to talk about Douglas Talmy and Douglas Talmy, the guy who does the
Doug Tallamy.
to have a natural system in your yard instead of
Oh, yeah. Well, Doug Tallamy has written several books, and he also he may have a website, I'm not sure. But what is the title of his book? I can't remember right now.
he's written Nature's Best Hope.
Oh,
He
Nature's
wrote,
Best Hope, yeah, and
Homegrown,
something about how to...
Homegrown National Parks. That
Oh,
is
yeah,
the most
yeah.
recent
Oh, well,
one.
that Homegrown National Park is the idea that you collaborate with your neighbors, like if you live, say, in your neighborhood or your subdivision or whatever, and so that the wildlife, the birds and the little rodents and things, the bunnies, and that they have a food source in your whole neighborhood. And it's a very interesting concept, if you can get cooperation from your neighbors that are also interested in doing that, you know, to, like if you live in a subdivision or, I don't know if I could do it on my block, but some people, there are some people that are interested, you know. There's a creek that starts at like near the village hall and runs all the way over to someplace in DuPage County, west of me. And that water, it's a natural drainage ditch, you know. And so I grow some water plants in there. And my neighbor has asked me, she did ask me if she could have some of my water plants, and I, you know, okay, when it's good time of year to dig them up, I'll give you some. And in the meantime, she had some landscapers come and they covered her whole ditch with plastic, you know. So I guess that idea went down the drain. Yeah, right. But I still have mine, and I have plants that grow in the water and up to the water. You know, it's part of my little prairie patch. So, you know, you can do interesting things in your yard like that. And if anybody wants to, I mean, I should have a yard tour, I really should, come spring, you know, come when it's really spring, not this cold stuff.
I just wanted to add, next time you're strolling your neighborhood, just take a look. So, I don't mean to get on a high horse, but biodiversity is a really important aspect of how we try to handle our changing world, changing climate. Just take a look as you go up and down your street, you know, what kind of plants do people have in their yard? Are they producing any kind of fruits or seeds for the birds or the wildlife that happen to be there? How do they have the structure of their habitat? You know, is there a tree above? Is there a shrub below? Is there an understory as well? All those things are ways, it's so simple for us to make these changes if we're, you know, if we're lucky enough to have a property where we can make choices about how we use it. Oh, you can't hear me? Sorry. So another thing Kirk and I do is we just have a giant pile of brush that all the birds hide there, but then the Cooper's hawk comes and he lands on top and just kind of stands there and waits for one to try to make an exit. And I was looking for pictures of brush piles before we did the seminar, and every single one just had a Cooper's hawk on top of it. So I was trying to show one that was hiding cardinals or sparrows or something, but anyway, this is what ours looks like. And it breaks down over time, and at the bottom is this black compost. So it's an easy way to take care of those things. It's just another way to avoid stuff leaving your property and going to a landfill or some kind of a place where the nutrients are basically just taken away from your yard. Questions, comments?
Kate compiled a long list of resources.
Yeah, I had this last slide, if anyone's interested about
okay.
this, but we can talk about this another time. This is the that entombing effect that I was talking about, where the leaf litter breaks down. It's incorporated, of course, into all the different organisms that live in the soil, whether it's an invertebrate, all the different microbes and fungi and things like that. The bacteria are within all those things, just like in our gut, all the organisms have the bacteria living in them. And to me, this looked like a mitochondria, but it's actually supposed to be a bacterium. Here's a little tail on it, one of the swimming kind. And it's just so fascinating to me to find out that dead microbes can become this powerhouse of storing carbon by integrating themselves with minerals in the soil. I mean, it's like a geological process. It's not just a simple thing we're doing. So I don't know, I tend to get off on tangents, but this was something that I found very interesting. That the little teeny microbes kind of rule the world, and here's just another example of that. So, well, anyway, Susan mentioned, if anyone's interested, I have a long reference list. We could email you the presentation. These are about how to do leaves and brush piles. There's one here from Conservation Foundation. These are usually what's it called, the agricultural thing in each state. state has, Department of Agriculture, for lack of a better word, excuse me, Audubon, all these different connections. And then some of the more technical stuff about composting, the Extension Office, and a couple of the papers that I referred to with the microbial carbon pump. So if you're interested, just let us know, and we can send you a copy. So.
I went to the office on my way up here and tried to make a copy of this description of the compost crank, and we couldn't get the copier to work. So I do have it on my phone. If anybody's interested, I can send it to you. So,
And we could also take a tour of the church compost.
yeah,
show
we
them the church
could. It's
compost.
kind of cold out there, raining. Yeah.
Thanks, that was very nice. I think it would be nice to take a look at the compost. And anyone can just go out there and pull the lid off and look at it if you're interested and see. And I do think there's an element of magic to it that's, once you start doing it, you see this magic of stuff that just was sitting on your counter or thrown away when you made a pizza or something like that, or a salad, that becomes this wonderful soil that's so enriching to your garden. So thanks so much for talking about it, and we appreciate your interest.
Just wanted to say one more. The compost out there, sometimes people who rent the building don't quite understand what's happening there. I went out to empty the green can one morning and I lifted the lid off and it was all the garbage bags from the previous night, all mixed into all these paper forks, plastic forks and paper plates. And like, oh.
Yeah, it happens a lot when we have events.
There is a problem with our whole system of getting rid of refuse. We're overwhelmed by it. We know our neighbors don't really know what should go into compost, what should go into recyclable stuff, and that's a whole other topic too, of really how to know what to do. And what I've understood is that if there's just a minor amount of unusable stuff put into recycling, they'll throw out the whole bin, the whole pickup, which is such a shame. People try to do this. I know we had a neighbor who was an elderly Korean woman, and she just had no idea what she was doing and why she was doing it. You try to educate her, but it didn't really work. So,
Yeah, that's a topic for a whole nother session, but my mantra is, when in doubt, throw it out.
all right, thanks so much for coming. 2 weeks from today, the 5th Sunday, will be a special science, this is the 3rd Sunday of the month. The 5th Sunday of the month, we will have a Science Sunday to make up for missing the first Science Sunday of the month. All right, so